Alright guys, in this video Lee is going to be implementing the logic for tool selection, primarily focusing on the OnGUI method.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Threw me off there for a sec. Of course, that's not really
OnGUI.
hard to do. Yes, OnGUI. No, we're going up here. We need some more constants. Magic numbers. So,
They're not magic up there.
oh, they're okay up here?
Yeah, because they have names and, well, unless you name it something like K. No. Put readable names in. No, or, okay.
See, it's a magic number.
Yes, I see that.
All right. Basically, I want a couple of constants to keep track of the number of tools that we've got running and the number of brushes,
Okay.
which, funny enough, works out to be 4 for each of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, no big deal there. Now, we're going to need another couple of fields. So, we're going to make a private static. Now, this is going to be an array of booleans. So, this particular one is going to keep track of which of our tool toggles are on. We're not really using real buttons. We're going to be using toggles. Toggles can be on or they can be off, and you can switch between the states. But the way that they're handled inside of Unity, they don't by default turn off all of the toggles that are associated with a group of toggles. So what we're doing is we're faking that type of functionality by creating an array of booleans, one for each one of my tools. I can then say, okay, I need to turn off all of the toggles for tools. I just reinitialize the tools to be a new array, which sets them all to false, or I could loop through them and set them all to false. And then that makes them all false. And then I can turn on the specific one that I want. So as you select tools, what you're really doing is reinitializing the array and then setting that tool's corresponding element to true. And
Okay.
it's just a trick. So we're going to set this to be a new Boolean. Why didn't I pick that up anyways? But whatever. All right. This is going to be our max tool count. So this will set up our array of bools for keeping track of tools. We also need to have a concept of a sticky tool. So this is what happens when you use your tool too much and you don't clean it off before putting it away. Now, seriously, what it is a bool to determine whether or not our tool is going to be stuck on a particular tool. So if you remember back in the demo, Jason had the ability, he could select any one of the 4 tools, being the raising, leveling, smoothing, or lowering, and that tool stayed active without holding any modifiers. So if you selected the smoothing tool, you can continuously just smooth. But the moment that you hit one of the modifiers, the tool then reverted back to its natural behavior, which is always being the raising tool, unless you hit Control for lowering, Shift for smoothing, or Control and Shift for the leveling tool.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that you go back and hit one of the buttons, it needs to stick that tool again. So that's what this flag is determining whether or not we're using the sticky tool or if we're in the default behavior. So that's what our sticky tool is. Now, inside of our OnGUI, let's go ahead and close some of this down. All right. We need to have well, let's see, how would I explain this one? We need another variable, and this is going to be a temp, just some temp information. This is going to be an array of booleans. Again, And we're going to be using this multiple times, and the way we're setting this up is going to apply for our tools, it's going to apply for our brushes, and it's going to apply for our stencils. Because they're all toggles and only one can ever be active at a time, we need to do the special considerations to reset them, but we need to know when something needs to be reset. So the way this is handled is we need to have a temporary array of booleans to keep track of all the states of all the toggles before we go through the toggles, because then we can compare the before states with the states after all the toggles have run, and we can compare the two and figure out which one, if any, has changed. And if one of them's changed, we know which one it is, and we can select the right tool, or we can select the right brush, or the right stencil, depending on what part we're dealing with.
Right.
So we're going to use the temp array is going to be of size tool count. And then we're going to draw our background, which is our box. The nice thing about the GUI, OnGUI system is that it's drawn from back to front. So whatever you draw first is going to be at the farthest back, and as you draw the next element, each one is drawn on top of the previous. Unless you get into GUI layout and some other crazy stuff. But for this purposes, we're assuming that it's a back to front drawing order. All right, now what I'm going to do here is I want to do a deep copy of our array. So basically I'm doing a loop of our elements from 0 to our max tool count. And I'm going to set our temp element I to equal our tools element I. This way I'm not getting a reference and setting my temp to be whatever my tool is by mistake when I start calling these toggles. Now, this is one part I'm not happy with, but this is R&D, is the fact that I should have an easier way of assigning like an enumeration for element 0, so you knew that element 0 was actually the raising sculpt tool, or the ability to grow this dynamically if we came in here and decided that we wanted to have 8 tools instead of 4 tools without having to recode all this. But that gets into reflection and some stuff that I didn't want to get into just to keep this fairly simple. So, but you know, if anybody wants to go that route, have at it. So what we're doing is, instead of using a button, we're using the toggle. Now, our toggles have, just like our boxes or any other one, a certain set of parameters, being usually it's a rectangle that defines the drawing region. So we're going to be using 5 by our screen height minus 52. And I know that each one of these buttons or toggles is going to be 48 pixels by 48 pixels. Then we need to pass in our initial value of our particular button or toggle. So that's going to be whatever is held in the value of tool 0. And then resources dot load. I know you're going to cringe at this too. So raise sculpt tool.
Mm-hmm.
As texture. What is it? Texture. You're not going to come up. There it goes. Texture 2D. And then this is where we tell it what skin to put in. So we're going to tell it to use our skin, which we've already loaded, and we're going to tell it to use the button style. And that's going to move everything over a little bit. So if I go ahead and build this out now, well, this isn't going to do much. It should draw our first tool icon. So if I hit it, here's our raise button.
Very nice.
So that's our very first one. It's a start. But like I said, if we wanted to clean this up, what we'd want to do is we wouldn't want to load the resources here. We'd want to have some sort of structure that had each one of the icons in it, a better way of dealing with the naming, and some way of using reflection that would allow us to dynamically add our tools. The same with brushes and stuff like that. And actually, I think you do have a video where you kind of go into that. Has those gone out yet? I don't remember.
Went about it slightly differently, but no, they have not. They will.
Oh, okay.
They will in the near future.
Well, I know you were using enumerations and reflection on the enumerations. Were you not?
I was doing a few interesting things.
Yeah, well, I know the links and lambdas and stuff like that, but yeah, this could definitely be done a little bit better. But for a couple hours worth of work. All right, now each one I'm insetting by 50 pixels. That's going to give us a little bit of border, 2 pixel in between each one. So that will line up all of our buttons.
Well, I'm just looking at it real quick. Just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Did you
want the same thing all the time, or what?
What if you did an array that held, and I'm just keeping something this idea very simple so that it conforms with your R&D here. But what if you had an array that was initialized at start with those 4 different textures loaded in? So it's a texture 2D array of 4 elements, and then so inside the OnGUI here, which obviously is getting beat to death as we all know, you just reference each of those each of the elements, because you know you're using 0, 1, 2, 3, so you could access the textures array with 0, 1, 2, 3, because then you wouldn't hit the resources.load
right
4 times with every OnGUI hit, which is heavy.
Now, what I was thinking about was similar is if I was to do this without getting the reflection and stuff, is I would build it in the config ini file.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have your settings laid out, probably comma separated. So you would have your positional information,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the resource that it needs to load,
Mm-hmm.
and probably the tool that it's associated with in
Mm-hmm.
some sort of form, and then have that read in so that your part of your terrain sculptor could have a static that would load all that in, and then it could iterate through that, getting the positional information, already have an array of all of the icons cached,
Mm-hmm.
so it only reads that at the beginning, and then just calls that up via. So it would probably build some sort of list of a structure that had all the information and just loop through it for a number of elements in the list,
Mm-hmm.
and then just go through it that way. Because it's in the config file,
Mm-hmm.
then you can add more stuff to it without having to do it in code. So we could do it that way. Same thing with the stencil was another way I was thinking about handling it.
I'd probably break all of the tools up in. Well, all right. Let me be careful here, because I don't want to get far off into the way I think with design. But even right now, though, just taking all of those resource.loads and getting them out of the beat to
Yeah,
death on GUI method wouldn't be a bad thing. But anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt. Just sorry. Continue.
yeah. Like I said, this was all as far as R&D because I don't have a good structure for how to deal with this stuff yet. So that's why they're still here. And it's not really killing frame rate that much. So
I mean, but wouldn't that work though if you just had a private um, a texture 2D array in this class, a field, and you initialized it at like
well, see, the thing is with resources.load, if I remember the way they work, they only load from disk once. Then every other time I call this, it's just passing the reference from it loaded. It's not going and getting it a second time or a
okay.
third. It's only done the very first time. And then once it's loaded into memory, you're just passing the reference to it. Otherwise, if
But
this was going to the hard drives,
by calling the load method, it still has to do a check to see if it has it cached, as
yeah,
opposed to just direct access to. But that's
right.
cool. It's cool. Let's
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, well, what I was thinking was one step further, in addition to just holding this information, keeping track of its positional information in the UI.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, all of this would be, in my opinion, would all be bundled up into the actual appropriate class for each of those tools. But let's continue.
Into its own appropriate.
Well,
Oh, you mean getting to the point where each tool draws its own button?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Why not?
Well, the only thing
It's okay.
that
Let's stay focused.
no. The only thing that I see with that being an issue is being able to have a central place where everything could figure out where it needs to draw from. So if each button is drawing its own, but you had an overall UI that had the capability of repositioning stuff depending on what's going on with its states.
Well, I'd be using me personally. Now I'll kick from don't know anything mode until I know a little bit of stuff. I'd use GUI layouts and allow automatic positioning and all with a handful of constraints in there, so that I simply wouldn't have to worry about it when the window resized, if it was to do that and support that functionality.
That's not what I meant by repositioning as far as the UI adjusting. I was speaking more of the ability to tear stuff off, move it all over the screen, redock it, things like that.
Sure, all that could still be made to work. Continue,
I am
because I just
continuing.
don't
I'm
want us
reading.
to get into one of our long design
Debates.
discussions.
Well, yeah, it just gets into the thing of, do you want this thing working in 2 hours
I
or
know.
2 days?
That's why I said I'm quiet. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm still typing.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. See, look, I'm moving stuff around, but I'm not explaining what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's back to explaining. Sorry,
No,
guys.
hey, we're not supposed to explain. Remember, this is over the shoulder. I type, they just
I
watch.
know, but come on, we've done with
Yes, I know they like it. So, what we're doing is we're going to loop through each and every tool to our max count, and then through each step of the process, we're going to compare our temp value of before we went into all the toggles and our long, discussion about design. And we're going to make sure that it's not equal to tools I. So if it's not equal to it, then something has changed. If something's changed, we got to figure out what has changed and deal with it. So another one of these really fun ones. If I equals 0, I love making you cringe because I know that's what you're doing right now.
I'm finally.
Not after you see what I'm doing here. So sculpt tool equals a new raising tool. And then right, so that's going to create a new tool of the appropriate type. Then we've got a couple of things to do.
Wouldn't it be awesome if all of the tools were just held if they were all instanced and held in in an array, and then you used enumerations to name them and identify them, and so all of those ifs and all would just be gone, and you would just simply say that the sculpt tool is equal to a sculpting tool
Yeah, I
bracket.
know. I think I said something like that. So at the beginning, it's like going, then we could do enumerations to clean this up, and we could do reflections to build the enumeration based off of the number of tools that are based off of the abstract class. So we could build the enumeration, not even have to hard code the enumeration. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. It's
Yeah, yeah,
just
I'm quiet.
I didn't want to get into it.
I know that's cool. That's cool. You're almost
I
there.
was
It's
no,
groovy.
no. You keep going back. Wouldn't it be cool? Yes, it would be cool to do it. I just didn't want to spend 2 days doing it. I'm being
That would have
lazy
taken
here.
2 days. Okay, you're being lazy. Fair.
No, it's being me, and it takes me 2 days to write that kind of stuff. Because now we're getting into,
You're doing greatly.
generics and stuff. No, you're. I'm going to bed after this one.
No.
See, you blew it.
Oh gosh.
I told you you weren't going to like this. I did it extremely basically.
No, that's fine.
No, it's not. You don't like it.
Extremely
You hate it.
basically.
Yes.
Extremely
It
basic.
is. It's almost 8 o'clock in the morning, okay?
You're doing
Shut up.
great. Will do. Shutting up now. Click.
All right, so we're resetting the tools array to all falses. Then we're setting the tool that has changed to be true. And then we're going to set our sticky tool to be equal to true. And then we're going to break out, because the moment we find one change, there should only ever be one change. So the very first one that we find is it, we break out of the loop. And then that will drop us out.
Okay.
At the end, I do want to do a GUI dot draw texture. And this is similar to a box and just about everything else. We give it a rectangle. The rectangle is going to start at 205. It's going to go to screen height minus 52. This is just offsetting it slightly. It's going to be 8 pixels wide, and it's going to be 48 pixels high. And I'm going to do another resources.load just for Jason. Now, a lot of the way this code really is the fact that I wasn't sure where I was going to go with it and what its final form was going to be, so I didn't want to space it all over the place.
Yeah, no,
If I
that's
keep it
cool.
all in line, I'm explaining it to them. I know you don't understand
It
it.
was a quick thing you threw together. The graphics and all, it was like less than 2 hours, or right at 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, not just writing this little part.
But see, the nice thing is once everything's in line here, as we go, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do this and this? We don't have to go through code everywhere. We can go, okay, this works. This layout's nice. We like it. Now let's redesign it with
Yeah,
proper.
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, this is just R&D. Little research, little development, little check it out. Do we like it? Do we not like it?
Does it even work?
Mm-hmm.
Because, I spent more time trying to sort out how to make grouped toolbars. So, when this doesn't work and go, hey, why the hell doesn't that work?
Right.
And, all right, so what's going on here? 55, tools, 1, scan, resources, lowering. Well, that should have worked. It's drawing 1, so my guess is it didn't build. And
Just hit Control R and
I did. I'm waiting.
Yeah. Hmm.
So we're missing one. It's gone walkabout on us.
A misspelling in there?
Could be. Who knows? Come on. So lowering sculpt tool. It's lower.
Sweet.
All right. So
Ooh, look at that. Nice job.
now we've got buttons that go over the top. If I click on one, we've got another issue. But it does, highlight, which is kind of cool.
Oh, the
Oh,
dog finally woke up.
yeah, yeah. All right. So a couple of issues that I noticed was that our button inside of our resources has one state that we don't need still. So if we go to on active, on hover, on focus, focused, and active. Oh, custom styles. That won't do us any good. Let's try our button. So normal, none, good. Hover, box, good. Active, good. On normal, that's good. On hover, we don't need this state. We need to turn that off because we don't want it to change when we go over the top. We also don't need on active, so we can kill that. And let's see, on focused. Good. So nothing there. So that will fix that problem. Now, the interesting problem is the moment I clicked on one of the buttons, we ended up sculpting right underneath us and we fell through the world. So to address that issue, whoops, go back over here, go into our handle sculpt tool and let's see how I did that. And handle sculpt tool. All right. Now this is the fun part. Okay, our bar we know is 56 pixels high. And we know that it is drawn at the bottom of the screen. So we'll check our input for our mouse position. And we'll check to make sure mouse position Y is greater than 56. Now, notice we're not using screen height minus 56. That's because input position Y assumes that the bottom of the screen is 0 and the top is whatever the screen height is, which is backwards from the way other things work. You want to say anything about the magic number?
No,
I know it's killing you.
I'm good.
Hold on. There. We'll comment the magic number. So, that way you don't twitch too bad. All right. So if we go back and we look at it again.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So raise, lower. Now if I select on one, wow, it's still doing it.
Booyah!
But our GUI skin isn't drawing the weird extra states.
Right. That looks good.
So that's a start. Now, why, oh, why did you not take this information? Build. Try that a couple more times. I should. Yeah, it was another one of those. I just don't feel like building.
Right, and the reason that we saw the changes with the buttons were because, as you pointed out earlier, when working on the GUI skin, that's not something that has to recompile. Those changes were made the moment you were in the inspector adjusting those textures by removing them.
Yep. Now, here's something that's interesting. If I've got the level tool selected
Mm-hmm.
and I go over here someplace, I would expect the leveling to work, but it's still adding. So we've got the raise tool active,
Mm-hmm.
but our thing says, no, you've got the level tool. And conversely, if I hit some of the modifier keys like Control Shift, they're not changing yet.
Mm-hmm.
So all we've done is made some nice little buttons that we can toggle between the states,
Mm-hmm.
and it clears all the other states, but it does select the tool for a very brief moment. And the next time it goes through the handle sculpt or the select sculpt tool, the code is in place that it automatically reselects the raise tool anytime any of these are selected, which is why we put that field in for a sticky tool, that boolean. That's going to tell our handle or the select sculpt tool to not automatically select the raise tool if nothing's pressed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to go, if somebody's actually pressed this, we're not going to reset this to raise. We're going to leave it, the tool, whatever selected. And that's what we'll be implementing in the next video.
Okay.
But we do have our initial button set up, and we've got our little separator bar.
Yeah, looks great.
So it's a start,
All right.
even though the code's kind of rough and not written the way you would have liked it
It's
with
quick R&D,
enumerations,
Lee.
res.
It's fine. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, with that, that is going to conclude this video, and we'll see you in the next. Thanks a lot.